Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar about Redbird Connect. It's a new product for us, and we'll go over it in some detail. But first, a couple of quick introductions. My name is Josh Harnagle, and I'm the VP of Marketing for Redbird Flight Simulations. I'm also a CFI, II, and an MEI, and I have Alex DeBlaze with me as well. He's going to be our guinea pig on the sim. He'll be acting as he is a sales rep, so if you want to buy a sim, talk to Alex. But also, he's a student pilot pursuing his training, so this will give him an opportunity to use the sim as well as us an opportunity to kind of see how Connect works. So a couple of admin notes. This will be recorded and available later later today. You'll probably get an email about it. So if you have to jump off, no problem. If you want to share it with anybody, you can. If you have questions, which I expect there will be a fair amount of questions, go ahead and use the question box inside of GoToWebinar and type them in, and we'll get them answered. I also have Joey Colleran on the webinar with me. She'll be in the background answering questions and managing some stuff as well. So with all that sort of admin stuff taken care of, let's go ahead and move on. So when we talk about what Redbird Connect is, or what we're going to talk about today, is we'll go through what it is, the requirements to use it. We'll actually have a training session with Alex. We'll talk a little bit about its use at the Virtual Pilot Proficiency Center this year, and we'll have plenty of time for questions. So what is Redbird Connect? Well, Redbird Connect started as a response to the COVID situation. In early March, as things were shutting down, we had some concerns, obviously, about flight training, and so did a lot of our customers. And we actually got a couple of calls and had a conversation with some customers about how to enable training to happen either at the student's location if they have a Redbird sim, or if they could get a Redbird sim, or maybe creating ways for the flight school to have contactless training where the instructor didn't have to be present, and they could let students into their building, use the sim, clean it up, and then go home, and the instructor would never have to be in the same space, even the same building as them. And so that's where it kind of started. It took us a little bit of time, maybe a couple months, to build this out, but functionally what we're doing is we're creating a tunnel from an internet website, from a portal on the internet, into a simulator, and we give the simulator shares the session, and all it's doing really is sharing data about the flight, and it will accept commands back in. So the software is actually running. There's a small thin client that's running on the simulator that creates that tunnel, but then most of this is actually happening on a server in the cloud. And so the simulator itself isn't running Connect per se. What it's really doing is creating a tunnel for Connect to connect to it. We weren't super creative with the name on that one, but what it enables is remote instruction and access to the instructor station functions that are built into Redbird Navigator, and the launching flights, ending flights, pausing flights, manipulating the environment as the flight goes on, etc. So it gives us pretty much everything we need. We also, Alex and I we did a couple of test lessons with the very first iterations of it, and it became extremely obvious that we needed way more information than the instructor station provided by default to make this work. Because you'll notice I'm using GoToWebinar right now as a camera, and in a normal training event, I would use this camera and this is how I would talk to my students, through third-party video conferencing software, something like Zoom or something like that, set up on an iPad that's in a mount, essentially where the instructor would sit. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the requirements part. But I'm using GoToWebinar today, but you'd use any third-party software. But you can see I don't have enough detail on the screen through GoToWebinar or through Zoom or anything else to really see what's happening in the simulation. All I can really see is what Alex is doing. And so from the instructor standpoint, I want to be able to see his hands. I want to see where his hands are, how he's manipulating the controls. But I need way more information about the flight, position, altitude, airspeed, all that kind of stuff. I need to know what radio frequency is tuned, what his nav data source is, all that kind of stuff. So we actually built a PFD that'll run inside of the instructor station. So the instructor has access to all the basic flight information as well. So that kind of covers what Connect is. It's available now. You can, if you have a Navigator, a simulator with Redbird Navigator, and you're under a support agreement or a service agreement or under warranty, the updates should be available. You should be able to go to the updates tab on your sim. If it's connected to the internet, it'll probably show it. It'll be a little triangle. If not, you'll have to connect to the simulator, refresh updates, pull it down, install it, and you'll be good to go. And then for those of you not under service agreement or under warranty, I'll have a little bit of talk about, we'll have a conversation about that when we get to the Pilot Proficiency Center part later on. So for our demo, well, actually, I think we want to go over requirements first. So requirements are, I kind of touched on them. You need a Redbird simulator, FMX, TD, MCX. I don't know, I actually don't know whether this runs on the J or not. It might, but it's definitely designed more for like the TD or the FMX for instructional purposes. And it needs to be running Navigator, some version of Navigator, and you need to be on a service agreement or a warranty to get the software updates. It's going to have to be connected to the internet the entire time you're doing a training session. Obviously, that's how we're able to do this. You need an internet connection. But other than that, that's really the core requirements for Connect to run. What I would say in terms of best practices, what you're going to need is at the sim site, wherever the sim is, you're going to need an iPad or even an iPhone would work, or a smartphone would work, something to run your third-party video conferencing software. It can be Zoom, Google Meet, it really doesn't matter what it is that you're using for that, but you need to be able to see the student and see what their hands are doing, and you need to be able to talk to them over a video conference line. And yes, Thomas, it will work on the MCX. And then I would set that iPod or that iPad or iPhone or whatever up in a tripod with a mount. We use the MyGo flight mounts because they're handy, and you might have one from using it in the airplane. So we put that on a tripod and we set it up basically where the flight instructor would sit. If this was a normal lesson, I would actually adjust this camera a little bit so I could have a better view of Alex's hands. I don't really need to see all the stuff on the, to the left of his face. That's not important for this lesson, but I think it's a little better image for the webinar. So you can see all of Alex. But in the real session, I would probably turn it a little bit so focus more on the controls, and it will work on an LD, FMX, LD, MCX, SD, MX2, any of those sims it'll work on. So we turn it in, focus it a little bit. So there's an iPad in the cockpit with the student. And then on the instructor side, you really need two screens. You need one screen to run the video conferencing stuff, and then you need one screen for the Net Instructor Station Navigator interface. That could be accomplished with a laptop for the instructor station and an iPad for the Zoom call, or one computer with two monitors. But it's kind of difficult if you have to switch tabs to keep track, because you're really going to be looking at the instructor station, then looking at what the student's doing, and looking at the instructor station, looking at what the student's doing. So for the instructors, I recommend having two different screens. And a good stable internet connection. That is definitely a requirement. The Connect portion of it, the part that we're talking directly to the simulator, does not use very much bandwidth at all. It's just small text-based commands. It's not really a bandwidth hog. The video conferencing stuff is more, because you're streaming video. So that's a thing to keep in mind. Like if you wanted to run that on a cell data plan, you could do that. But anyways, that's kind of our overview of requirements. I have a question, a question I'd like to ask or answer here. I have two FMXs and one MCX running through one router. Can I have 3 different students working with 3 different instructors at the same time? Yes, you should be able to, because what is going to happen, it's a little bit hard to see, but on Alex's screen, what happened was he went to the Navigator home screen essentially, and then asked and clicked on the icon that said Redbird Connect, and it takes him to this screen, and it'll ask him to start sharing. You can click start sharing, and it'll pop up a 6-character code. That 6-character code is unique to that simulator. So you could have multiple simulators on the same network, but that character code is going to connect directly to that simulator. And actually, on that note, Alex, could you have Joey send me over the code for you? There it is. Okay, so what we're going to do now, what we're going to attempt to do now is through GoToWebinar, we're going to try to run one of these sessions. So Alex has gone there, he shared the screen, and we're basically ready to go. So let's see how this works. Okay, so I've switched now. This is a web browser, Chrome. I'm at flyredbird.com. So the student had sent me the code, his 6-digit code, and I go to flyredbird.com. Now, you're about to be able to, honestly, if you wanted to control Alex's session yourself and from multiple places, I think we lock it out once one person is connected, but theoretically you could, but please don't. So anyways, I have his code. In this case, it's 3 Golf Alpha Juliet. Okay, so I enter the code in, it connects. If I entered a wrong code, it would say there's no simulator online that matches that session. So right now I'm connecting to his Navigator session, hopefully. And the joys of running real time here. All right, that may have been an old session. Let's, Alex, go ahead and hit stop sharing and reshare again, okay? And then send me the new code. So Alex has got to get his keyboard. And he's gonna stop sharing and then reshare again. It may be the same code, it may be a new code, but I'm wondering if maybe that session was getting a little old. Okay. All right, we got a new code here. All right, so what's happened, I do believe we reset codes, so hopefully this one will work a little bit better. Okay, well, let's see if this loads. Again, I apologize, we're kind of pushing it to the max here. But let's see, are there any other questions I can ask while we're waiting for this to load? Oh my goodness, yeah, okay. All right, so again, apologies for the delay. So we're gonna reboot the machine and see if that gives us a better result. So give us 1 second, we'll reboot and then try this again. Okay, so we're gonna, okay, let me see. We got a couple questions. Okay, so Herb is asking about what does the FAA think about this program? That's a good question. We don't have a strong answer from the FAA right now, but I assume we'll hear. The way you read the regs, there's no specific requirement for the instructor to be physically present. Obviously, they were written in a time in a world where it was kind of, why would you have a simulator when the instructor wasn't present? Or why would you have how could you do that? But we'll see. We don't have a specific response yet from the FAA. All right, so where else do we?
2Q3 I-17.
Where do you find the access code? So that's a good question. So on the simulator, you click, when you're on the home screen, you click Redbird Connect icon, and then it'll pop up a window, and all you have to do is hit start sharing, and then it'll generate the code, and then the student will share that code with you, and you should be good to go theoretically, like we're gonna try now. There we go. All right, now we're connected to the simulator. Looks like it's good. Okay, so you'll notice it's asking me to log in here. That's because there's a pilot key plugged in. This is just the standard pilot key thing, like for gift flights or anything like that. You can also somebody pulled the pilot key out. So you can log in with a pilot key or with Redbird. For this demo, we don't need that. So I'm gonna go ahead and close out of that. You'll notice here, I'm connected now to his TD. His screen hasn't changed. Nothing's happening on his side. He could use the keyboard and start a flight, or if he has a wireless navigator connection, he could use his iPad there in the cockpit and use dispatch and start a flight just like normal. It would work fine. But until I do something, until I make a change, nothing's gonna happen there. I also only have access to the dispatch app and the instructor station app. That is essentially, we want to limit the ability for people to do things to simulators remotely, because, you know, let's say you own the sim and you're sharing it with an instructor, you don't really want them going in and updating software and that kind of stuff, or changing admin emails and all that junk. So what this does is this limits it to flight specific functionality. We can log in, we saw that. We can check and see what our device connection status is. We have that information. We can actually turn the unit off if we wanted to. But let's go ahead and go into dispatch. When we go in here, you'll see we don't have a pilot key in, so our gift flights are locked, but we do have our standard dispatch screen. We have favorites, we can pull up gift missions, we can go to our saved flights. For this demo, we'll do a free flight. Again, Alex is a new student pilot, so he's going to be in basically a 172 example, and we're going to start from Austin Executive, but we're going to actually start him in the air at 3,500 MSL. We'll put him at 110, 105 knots. And let's have him heading west, but to the east of the airport, 5 miles. Daytime, pet peeve of mine, I always set the visibility at something less than 50 miles. It's just, it doesn't, I mean, you never see that kind of visibility in real life, so we'll set it at 30. And again, if you've ever watched any of my webinars about best practices for instruction, I always think there should be some weather, some type of weather. So we'll put in a few clouds up at 9,800 feet. And let's call it wind from 280 at 5 knots, no gusts. Nice, good VFR day. And then I hit start flight. Okay, so now we're going through our start flight screen. We've kicked off the prepare session. You'll see that on Alex's monitor. It's launching this scenario. And right now we're essentially waiting for the flight sim engine to get started. And now it's started and we have an established connection check marks. Once this loads, it goes through its whole loading process. Boom, okay, the flight's up, Alex is there. He starts pause like normal. I can hit resume flight and unpause it. I can end the flight, but I'm probably gonna launch the instructor station. You'll notice I have, again, the reporting of the device connection and all that kind of stuff. And I have my little FAA disclaimer. Okay, So I'm gonna, before we get on, I'm gonna answer a few questions here. So Brett Sullivan says that he flies for a 135 operator and they're doing concurrent ground school remotely and traveling to the home office for the flight test. So that may be, the FAA may be open a little bit to the idea of remote ground school at least, and this may qualify. Do you have to have a pilot key? You don't have to have a pilot key. We recommend that you have, you need one if you're gonna fly a gift mission or any of that kind of stuff, because that's how you unlock those missions. I would recommend every student have a pilot key. You can go create them on account.redbirdflight.com, even if you don't have a gift license, and you use those to track your flying, because then you can go up to debrief. You can log into your Redbird account at debrief or at account.redbirdflight.com, and you can see all your flights that you've done. You can see where you went, the history of them, when they happened, that kind of stuff. So, and then if you're operating at a flight school, it can be helpful to make sure that you have pilot keys, because then you can, there's a setting inside Navigator, you can set it up that you don't allow people to fly without pilot keys, which can control your access to the sim. Okay, enough chit chat on that. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit Launch Instructor Station, and that takes me to the instructor station that everyone's probably fairly familiar with. But there's a couple of new things here that I think are good to see. One, I can hit this little icon right here, and it'll pull up my PFD. So now I have airspeed and attitude information. He's paused, so nothing's updated yet, but I have all the information I need for being able to see what he's doing, how the lesson is going. So I'm gonna unpause the flight, and Alex, once I unpause it, what I'd like you to do is, I think you're at 3,500 feet, climb straight ahead on a heading of 270, basically west, to 4,500 feet, and then level off. Okay, so I'm gonna hit unpause. Alex is flying now. You'll notice all the gauges are alive. We're getting information. I can see what he has tuned into his nav radios and his comm radios. And I'm currently selected on nav 1. So I can hit this nav button and toggle through the different nav sources. He doesn't really have anything set up right now, but we're gonna try to push him a little bit. So Alex, can you hit on the GPS, can you do direct to KAUS, Kilo Alpha Uniform Sierra? So we can notice that as he's doing this, he's doing a pretty good job maintaining his heading and his rate of climb. He's typing it in, I can see his hands moving, he's typing it in, and then we'll, boom. All right, so now it's been entered. Up here I have my distance and my desired track to his, whatever he's got tuned into the GPS. I can come over here and I get my GPS CDI with cross-track error. Okay, so Alex, we're gonna level off at 4,500 feet. Too early, buddy.
Yeah.
50 feet beforehand. And okay, so now we're leveling off. Again, we have our PDF. We also have our moving map. This works the same as you're used to. We can move it around, find waypoints. This has got our base map in it, but if I wanted to, I could put in the VFR sectional map or the IFR low-end route map or street map. Either way, that's all in there the way it is you're expecting it to be. I can click on the map and reposition to a click location if I want, or the nearest airports to that location. I can pause the flight. I can pause it. I have my simulation paused banner up there. Resume the flight. All of that works the same way you're expecting it to work. We do have our additional options. We can save it, print the flight, or reposition to our last starting point. So this is our primary instructor display. We also have, we can pull this up and we can get our vertical track display, aircraft altitude over ground altitude. If he has an ILS tuned in, it'll show the approach feather, the glide slope feathers. So we have all that. And then finally, lastly, if we want this little gauge icon up here, we can drop that down, and now we have another display of altitude and heading. The main thing on here that's interesting to us really though, is we get a display of our RPM, manifold pressure, flaps, and gear handle positions if we want to confirm that. Okay, so Alex, go ahead and make a left turn to a heading of south. All right, while he's doing that, I'm going to take some time to answer a couple questions that have come in. Okay, Tracy's asking about Liberty. I believe I did see an article about them getting approval for remote sim instruction. That was not with us. I think that was something they did themselves. And again, I don't know, that may have been an approval for a Part 141 program. I don't know, honestly. But as far as I'm aware, there's not a specific simulator approval that we need or that we've been told is available even. So it may be more of a by training program situation. Okay, is the split screen flight info and moving map feature also now available via the instructor station running on Flight Sim? Yes, it is. This is the newest version of Navigator, which is 4.58, I think, that'll install, that should be available to you, and you will have this same PDF display function. All right, Jason is saying our local ATCs told us that they use landmarks to guide pilots in and out of our local airports. Is it possible to add third-party VFR scenario to RV simulators and or a new version prepared? Okay, so yeah, kind of. The third-party software is visuals can be added. It's not necessarily fully supported, but people do it. And if there are specific landmarks that you're looking for, you can do it that way. As far as new versions prepared, that's that'll be available. That's a work in progress, but we don't have anything available like that. Okay, I'm getting a comment or a correction based on my last comment about whether the PDF is available or the PFD is available in Navigator on the sim. So apparently no, that's coming in Navigator version 3.5.1, which isn't released yet, but is in final testing, and you should get an update soon. So the version that you update now will enable Connect and this screen, but it won't put this this tool on your sim. The next version, which I think is supposed to come soon, like in a month or something, will enable that. Okay. All right, so that's that. The top line on the I think that's PFD, does not show direct KUS. No, it doesn't, but that's the kind of thing that we need to hear and can get added. I mean, this is us trying to get something out the door as quickly as possible based on what we needed to accomplish the mission, especially at the PPC. But that's great. That's the kind of information we need. Showing the destination they have plugged in is a good idea. If you select the GPS to display on the HSI, what is the cross-track distance related to? Student may not have programmed to destination. Is there any way to for the instructor to say the two-way point? Okay, so the cross-track is off of your course. So like Alex is just now passing through the course and he's flying on the other side of it. So now he's 1.2 nautical miles to the left of the course when he hit, and that course was from when he pushed direct to Austin. So that's your cross-track error, is essentially your distance from the course. There is no way for the instructor to input stuff into the GPS or to change the frequencies or anything like that. That's really not the functionality of this. This is so that you can observe what they're doing, provide correction. Like if you say, this is clearly not the correct approach frequency, can you change your frequency or whatever? That's really the function of this. This is not the ability to actually manipulate the controls. Okay. Yes, okay, so Tracy's talking about the active leg being displayed. Understood. That was also a point that got brought up. Again, we're just trying to get stuff out the door to be helpful, but that's really, that's a good point. We can put that in on the next version, maybe, probably. Is there instruction documentation on how to use the new Redbird Connect function? Yes, do it. If you go to support.redbirdflight.com, there is down on the bottom of the homepage there, or the main support page, there's a section dedicated specifically to Redbird Connect, and it has a user's guide, how to install, how to enable, and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't talk specifically about the Navigator functions because those are really just the functions of Navigator, and there is a user guide for that. And when we come up with this, when this 3.5 version that we're seeing right now gets released, we'll update the Navigator user guide for that. Maybe Joey can send you a link to the support article on Connect and Navigator. May be helpful. Okay, I think that that covers all of that. So if we can just come back a little bit here to Alex, it looks like he's in the Class C shelf right now, is in trouble because he's not talking to anybody, but that's okay. And we can see his ground path, all that stuff that we're expecting to be able to see. All the standard instructor station functions work, so we can hit weather, we can change wind direction. It'll get a little bumpy, Alex. If we want, we can hit apply, and now his wind direction has been changed. We can see our METAR string has changed as well. I noticed this the other day. For some reason, this sim is set to metric, but that's a setting that you could make. You can change on the sim itself in sim management. This one is set to the metric METAR strings for our European customers. For some reason, if we wanted to, we could throw in, let's give him some snow showers. And now we'll see the weather has changed. It's windy and bumpy, and he's got snow showers. It's a weird day in Austin. Let's make it a little more realistic for Austin, though. And we'll put him in some pop-up thunderstorms. Don't fly into the thunderstorms, Alex. Okay, and now let's go, we can go into position. This is same sort of Navigator functionality. If I wanted to, let's say I wanted to move him to Manassas, Virginia, I can type it in, pull up the information. We can reposition by a runway, or, and this doesn't have to be an airport. It could be a nav aid, a waypoint, whatever. And we can put him in the air or on the ground, just like we did with the free flight. On the failures tab, he's got the round gauges, the steam panel plugged in, so we have steam gauge failures. If I wanted to fail his electrical system, I could do that. Now you'll notice his GPS is gone, the electrical system is gone. Turn it back on. Same thing with all of our, static, ADF, all the kind of failures that we would that you have access to through the instructor station. You also have the ability to do something like a timed failure. So I can say I want this failure to be triggered in 1 minute, 5 minutes, 15 minutes, or somewhere between 15 and 30 minutes from now. So I'll put that in there, and I get a countdown that the alternator is going to fail in 55 seconds. I have all that information available to me. I can hit cancel and get rid of that. I have my weight and balance information. I can change the fuel in the tanks, put them in a real desperate fuel situation, or add fuel if needed. And we can change put them outside of CG and all the kinds of standard instructor things. Again, time of day. Again, we can put them day, dawn, dusk, night, set a specific time via local, and that's local time at the simulator's location, not local time where the simulator happens to be in the real world. It's at the simulator's location in the simulated world, if that makes sense. And then the newest kind of instructor functionality is our reality mode. So Orbit allows you to freeze the simulator in space and then use the yoke and rudder pedals and trim wheel to spew it or to slide it around in that space. So if you wanted to, let's say you didn't want to reposition because reposition requires reloading the simulation, you could just, like, I want to be 10,000 feet, put it in orbit mode and use the trim wheel to drive you up 10,000 feet. Or you can do it, I want to skip ahead really fast through this section. The other thing you can do is play with the simulation rate. So now he's flying at 2x normal time, real time. So that way if we're on a long cross country or something like that, he can be, he's able to get through the long leg quickly and get down to the landings and all that kind of stuff that you would normally want to do. I'm sure he's had quite the ride with me playing with all the wind and everything. And so let's go ahead and slow that down. I will say on the reality mode, if you use orbit or you speed the simulation rate way up, if you travel a long distance, it will start to bog down because it's like trying to generate all of that scenery in memory and not refresh anything, and it gets or not dump anything off, and so it can get really bogged down. So just be aware of that. If you know, it's good to go use it to go 100 miles from where you are, or maybe even 500 miles from where you are, but it's really not designed to go from New York to LA in 30 seconds because it's going to bog the system way down. So that is all of our basic instructor station functionality. If we go to map, again, the map defaults to our standard map overview like this. So we have to click on the little artificial horizon gauge on the top left, and that'll pull up our PFD. Let's see how Alex did with all those altitude changes. So it looks like over the time, over the flight here, we lost some altitude. We got down to 4,100, almost 4,000 feet. Lost about 500 feet, but now he's climbed back up and he's at 4,500 feet, so he's doing a fine job. We got a little sideways there too, but again, that's our crosswind that got added in. So that's kind of the overview of the functions. Let's make sure I got any more questions. Will it work on the J with Navigator and Instructor Station? Yes, it will, as long as you have Navigator 3.48. Okay, on the J, can you recommend a mouse which will operate the nav comms frequently? So the one that has been recommended, or we have recommended, or the style, I guess is the better way to put it, that we've recommended in the past is the kind it's a stationary mouse with a ball, and then on the outer edge of the ball there's a ring that's the scroll ring, but they click essentially, and those tend to be the best for interacting with the knobs on the J. So that's what I would recommend there. Okay, is the Redbird going to pursue adding remote sessions to the FAA LOA? Well, the way we read it right now, there is not an allowance in the LOA for it. Like, we can only apply for credits that the FAA offers, and we don't have any real guidance, and the regs don't seem to make it clear whether this is allowed as is, or if we need some special new requirement. I mean, the software itself isn't gonna be it's covered in the LOA as it is, because in the LOA we say Redbird Navigator software, current version, blah blah blah, which this would be. I don't know about specifically allowing on the letter of authorization saying the words remote training via Redbird Connect or something like that. I don't know that the FAA would even do that, or there's no place that we've seen where they have the ability to even ask for that. So honestly, it's kind of an open question. Is the keyboard mouse required on the sim to use Connect? You need to be able to, well, let me say this. If you have an iPad that's wirelessly, or you have a tablet that's wirelessly connected to the sim that you use to run Navigator normally, then no, you can just use that for Connect. It's just in the normal Navigator functionality. If you're using like a TD or something like that that doesn't have a Wi-Fi connection, then yes, you do need the mouse to click the button to hit the share session. Frequencies, small and difficult to read. I think you're talking about up here. That's again good feedback. We may be able to figure out a way to make that a little bit easier to read. I will say in this format, it may be it may be kind of hard to see just because of the way we're sharing this screen. When it's your main monitor, it's pretty easy, and you can use the browser zoom function to zoom in. Okay, it would be nice if the map remembered the settings during a particular session, prevents losing. Okay, that's a good comment that I'll make sure Joey writes down as a feature request. How to change the navigational source from Nav1 to GPS in the PFD. So for the instructor to change the source of what's displayed, they click the nav icon, GPS, Nav1, Nav2, and it just cycles through. As far as the student will have to use the controls on the simulator to put in an ILS frequency, or put in a GPS or whatever. Can a remote CFI analyze an ILS glide slope and localizer feathers? Yes. So if Alex was an instrument student and he was shooting an ILS and he had an ILS tuned into Nav1 or Nav2, and I could click over here on the CDI to pull up Nav1, it will show the Nav1 deviation from a lateral course, and we'll get a glide slope indication on the altimeter just like you would in a G1000 that will give you glide slope information. You can also, on the map, if he has an ILS tuned into the GPS and he's on the right side of the runway, it'll show the localizer feather for that ILS on the map. And then if you pull up the ground track, this right here, it'll show the glide slope feathers. And you can see him in reference to that. Actually, Alex, make a right-hand turn to a heading of west. And then while you're doing that, I should know this by heart by now, but let me pull something up here. Alex, can you tune in the Nav1 radio? Can you tune in 110.95? Again, Alex is a early. There's Jeff. He's gonna help. Hi, Jeff. 110.95. So I'm having him tune in the ILS frequency for. Oh, that's actually. I'm sorry, Jeff. Wrong frequency. I'm in the wrong spot. Tune in. Oh no, 110.195. That should work. There it is. Okay. All right. So now I have the ILS frequency for runway 35 left into Austin up. You'll see I have my localizer feathers. I have the localizer course in tuned in, and I have my glide slope displayed. So Alex, make a right-hand turn to a heading in basically north, and then go ahead and start a descent. That's good, right about 500 feet a minute if you can. We're really far out from the ILS and we're really high, so this is just to give you kind of an idea. We're tracking the course and we have glide slope information. If I go over here, I can see if I click on the glide path button inside of the vertical track window, I can see his the lower glide slope and the upper glide slope, and I can see kind of where he is in that glide slope. And we're a dot below the slope, the glide slope, and that shows up in the track path as well. So Alex, go ahead and keep flying down like this if you can. Actually, come back to the left about 30 degrees. All right, while he's doing that, I'll answer a couple of questions here. Can I use the dongle on my TD instead of a wire connection? You can. That should be enough for Redbird for the connect portion of it. You're going to need good connection for the video conference stuff, but you should be able to use the Wi-Fi dongle. Can we get a VFR sectional and IFR? So Mike, yes, if you go up here to the layers tab, you can hit VFR sectional and it'll pull up a VFR sectional, or you can get the IFR low en route. Can the remote CFI see student loading approaches or flight plans on the MFD? No, Chuck, there is not any access to the flight plan functionality or the MFD stuff right now. You don't really see anything about what's happening in the GPS specifically at this point.
Because you're just a panelist, you're just a.
Okay, Tracy's another comment about kind of feature request layout. Well, Tracy will make note of that for Joey. Okay, so Alex, you're sort of flying in ILS. Good job. I'm going to go ahead and I think we'll probably end this session, but we'll have Alex stay there just in case we want to pull it up again. So what I'm going to do is hit in flight, and now you'll see the flight has stopped. Simulation is suspended over here, and now the simulation is not running. We have our status bars. I can go back to the home button. I'm still connected to this session. I can hit dispatch instructor station and still start a new flight. The student could click a stop sharing button on the sim, and that would stop my session, or I can close this web browser tab, and that would get rid of the session as well, and I'd have to re-enter the code and restart the session. Okay, so, Herb was asking where's the flight in button. It's the red circular button on the lower right-hand side of the map in Navigator on the instructor station. Is where that is, Herb. Sorry about that. Okay. Will the sessions we're seeing on the instructor station be available to review with the student? Yes, if you use a pilot key. If the student plugs in a pilot key or logs into their account with Redbird Landing, those sessions will be available at account.redbirdflight.com. I'll just log into mine, and we can show you just real briefly what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is just my account information, but if I go up here to debrief, I can pull up all my flights. And so I did some flying yesterday in the sim here, working on GIF version 2. Just FYI, we have a new version of Private Pilot that we're testing right now. But so these are GIF flights that I did. You can go in and click debrief, and I'll get, you can see the map display, you can see altitude track. If it's the current version of GIF, you'll be able to see the scores. The new version, the scoring isn't syncing yet. But that doesn't just apply to GIF. Like, here's a free flight. So if Alex had plugged in his key and used his pilot key for that flight, it would show up here as a free flight almost immediately. And you can go in and debrief it, and you'd see ground track, altitude track, all that kind of stuff. So as long as you have a pilot key plugged in, or you log in with your Redbird Landing account, or the student does, I should say, then that session will be pulled up. But that has really nothing to do with Connect. That's just another service. Okay, so let's go on here. Do I understand correctly that the secure session between the flight sim and remote instructor browser is via a Redbird server? If so, how many servers can this service support at the same time? Is there any performance concern? So yes, it does run on a Redbird server. It is, it's set up inside of Amazon Web Services, AWS, and it's scalable. So if we had 30,000 sessions, which would be ridiculous, we would never have that many, but let's say that there's really probably 3,000 sims in the world that can support Connect total, and that may be on the high side. If we had 3,000 simultaneous sessions, it would automatically scale up some extra servers to support that. So we shouldn't really ever run into a problem, and that's one of the reasons the cloud is so great. Okay, can we access bad ELF data remotely in ForeFlight? No. That is not a thing that the Connect Cygnus or the Redbird Cygnus or the Redbird Corvus functionality, where you take the simulator location and you put it on ForeFlight, will not work remotely. The student could have access to that. The student could be able to use ForeFlight in the sim, but the instructor is not going to have access to that data remotely, and that's a really difficult problem for us to solve to try another layer to add on. And it's probably not honestly on the roadmap anytime soon. The instructor has the instructor station with a map and the PDF, which should be a bare minimum. Understood that it's a bare minimum, but it is a bare minimum of the amount of information you need to be able to do some lessons and keep the students engaged in it. But I think that's that. Looks like we got all the questions answered for right now. So I'm going to talk briefly about the Pilot Proficiency Center. So early on in the development of this, we started talking with EAA, and as you may or may not know, Redbird supports is a big supporter of the Pilot Proficiency Center, which is held every year at Oshkosh at AirVenture. And we have a bunch of sims down there, and we support it with people and time and money, and we're really a firm believer in the project. And the idea is that pilots can come to Oshkosh and get training with an instructor on proficiency topics in a sim. There's ground sessions, there's seminars, that kind of stuff. So as EAA was kind of going through the process of what does it look like if we have to cancel, and then I think we're gonna have to cancel, and then yeah, we are canceling. We were involved in conversations early on in that about what the Pilot Proficiency Center would look like if they canceled. And simultaneously, kind of down two tracks, we were also developing Connect as a solution for our flight schools that needed a remote training option. So we committed to EAA that we would have Connect available in time to run the Pilot Proficiency Center this year. So that's how they're going to do it. I think it's, if you go to communityaviation.com or the EAA Spirit Week, I think is what it's called. There are links to the to sign up for it. What you need is a Redbird sim. It only runs on Redbird sims, and you register your interest, type in your serial number, and then they'll get in touch. Our support people maybe need to be involved to get you set up to handle one of these sessions, to run one of the scenarios. If you are using, because we have made this commitment to Pilot Proficiency Center and to EAA, if you are going to use a Redbird sim that doesn't have a warranty or does not have a service agreement, we will support it. If it's being, we'll do a one-time download and update to get you to the point where you can run the PPC missions as essentially a sign of goodwill towards EAA and our commitment to this project. So if it's going to be used for a Pilot Proficiency Center training this year, this month, then you can have access to it without a service agreement or a warranty. Otherwise, if it's just a normal sim, then it's going to be a thing that you have to have a service agreement for. Tracy, very helpful. It's eaatogether.org/waypoints/pilot proficiency is the place to sign up for the Pilot Proficiency Center stuff, and there's more information there as well. Okay, so it's we have a question from James about how do I download the software to the simulator. So assuming let's start with, let's say you have Navigator, any version of Navigator, you have a service agreement, you're entitled to the software download. If your sim is connected to the internet, every time it boots up, it's going to go and ask, hey, is there an update available? If it's doing that, it'll say, yes, there is an update available now. And there's a little triangle icon that'll show up on the top right hand side of the toolbar of Navigator when you log in, when you start Navigator, start your sim up. If you click on that, it'll say updates available. And then you can click there and you'll have to type in your password, which the default is Redbird12345. You may have changed it. And then it will download and install the required updates. If your sim is not connected to the internet normally, then what I would suggest you do is connect it with a dongle, or ideally a hardwired connection is best for the downloads. And then go into sim management, click on the updates tab inside of sim management and hit refresh. And then it'll check it, it'll go up to the server and check, and then you can download it again. There is an article on our support website, support.redbirdflight.com, that we published, I think, yesterday, that just talks about updating the software. Joey, you can maybe send that out as well, and that should help get them. The only software that needs to be installed is on the sim. The instructor, all they need is a web browser and an internet connection. There's no software that gets installed on the instructor side. Okay, I think that's it. I appreciate everyone's time. We're running up against the end of our schedule here, so thank you, Alex, and thank you very much. Again, this is recorded, and we'll be sending it out later today if you want to share it with anybody. All right, thanks.